hopefully they come through your headsets. It's one of the idiosyncrasies of the IGF world and sharing radio spectrumy things. We will be a moment. Bear with us, please. Right. I would just like to check Christy and Lucky online. Could you open your microphones, please? Give me a thumbs up if you're happy. And Christy. Yeah. That looks open. Thank you very much. That looks open. Give me one moment. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for waiting. My name is Adam Peake. I work for ICANN, ICANN's Global Stakeholder Engagement Division Group, and welcome to Workshop 159, Domain Names, Digital Inclusion and Innovation. We have a slight change to the speakers as mentioned on the agenda, so let me introduce you very quickly to who you'll be hearing from today. We have Jennifer Chung, Lucky Masarala online. Justin Chu has been replaced very nicely by Sajid Rahman. Ram Monahan will be with us shortly, and Christy Buckley, my ICANN colleague, is also online. So just to sort of set the scene for what we're going to discuss today. It's about domain names and about ICANN's projects and activities enhancing and improving, including inclusion of the domain name system. As many of you will know, we're adding to the number of top-level domain names that are available to all of you to register and to use, to apply for rather, to register and to use. And one of the main aims of this is to drive digital inclusion. The domain name system is not just a technical foundation for the internet, it's a powerful tool for inclusion, and we hope to enable people and organizations, and particularly underserved regions, to manage their online identities, to bring new geographies online, to bring new brands from the global south online, to bring more content, access to more content and available connectivity. I don't think you really need to hear too much from me. I will run through our speakers and try to do this in a way that will also introduce what they're going to talk about. I will begin with Sajid from across the table. Sajid is an ICANN board member, a member of the ICANN community, a background as an international banker, leader in the financial sector, venture capital firms, but also a business strategist who's very active in the global south, bringing development to what we were thinking of as underserved regions. And so he will give us a perspective as an ICANN board member and also member of the community about the discussions we're having around the enhancing what's available to you as top-level domain names and the new GTLD programs. Lucky Massarella is the CEO of Zakar, which is the manager of the largest CCTLD in Africa, South Africa's .za domain name, and also he's the leader of the Registry Africa group, which are the managers of the .africa top-level domain name and city names for Cape Town, Durban, Joburg, which are also managed by Zakar. So bringing a perspective of someone who's been bringing in new communities into the domain name space. Jennifer Chung, on my right, works for one of the leaders of the .asia Corporation and manager of the .kids top-level domain name. Many of you will know Jennifer also as a member or former member of the IGF's multi-stakeholder advisory group and also leader of the IGF Support Association, so a great supporter of the IGF. Coming soon, we hope, will be Ram Mohan, who's the Chief Strategy Officer for a company called Identity Digital, which is running the largest number of new top TLDs, around 500. He's also an ICANN, a former ICANN board member and the current chair of ICANN's Security Stability Advisory Committee. So he will join us when he's finished with another session in another room. We have a quite a packed schedule. And last but not least is my colleague Christy Buckley, who is leading our applicant support program. Christy is online and will give a perspective from how the staff is organizing this particular activity and what we're hoping for and what we're achieving at the moment with the work that the new GTLD program and the applicant support program are working on. So with that, I would like to begin turning over to Jennifer and Lucky. Lucky, I hope your microphone will be working, to give us a perspective as to people representing organizations that introduced top-level domain names in an earlier round when we introduced new TLDs to the internet. Lucky for .africa, Jen, .kids, and also the earlier experience with .asia. So I think, Jennifer, if you would like to begin, and here's a microphone.
Thanks, Adam, for that really lovely introduction. So I'll talk a little bit about the experience .asia had. I always like to say .asia is one of the middle children, not a legacy TLD, but definitely not part of the new round. It was quite interesting for .asia because it was really in response to .eu, which is obviously with the CCs, but it was an initiative to support the Asia-wide collaboration and upholding the ethos, really, of the Asia-Pacific community. then there was quite a lot of will, geopolitical will and community will to actually have this namespace. It actually pioneered quite a lot of different things. Our sunset, our sunrise policies were now, used in a lot of different ways when you look at the different registry policies that you see right now. And it was also one of the very first top-level domains that offered IDN registrations after, of course, the CCTLD fast track that was passed through back in 2009. So we started offering internationalized domain names in our namespace starting from 2011. Now, moving back a little bit and talking about the new GTLD part, we also do manage .kids, which is a kids-friendly, for kids by kids namespace, and that came in the 2012 round. I'm sure Christy will be really happy to talk to you a little bit more about the applicant support program, but one of the very interesting things about .kids was, in the last round, it was the only recipient for the applicant support program. So we are happy to share lessons we've learned, happy to share the feedback, and of course, we're looking forward to learning more about the applicant support program coming up. I think I'll stop here because I could talk at length, but I'd love for Adam to moderate.
Thank you, Jen. And yeah, I mean, I think the link between .asia as one of, as you said, not quite a legacy, but an in-betweener there is important, and the lessons of .kids. I wonder, Lucky, hoping that your microphone will work, if you could give us an introduction to the work you've been doing with .africa and perhaps some of the city names, but also what motivated you to apply for a GTLD in the 2012 round? How's it being used? And yeah, any words of wisdom about, what you're thinking for the next round as well, and applicant support. And over to you, and fingers crossed this works. Jan has very kindly offered to continue a little bit and perhaps touch on the questions I was asking Lucky, and I will just pop to the desk and see what we can find over there. So Jennifer, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, Adam. Like I said, I'm happy to talk more about, what we were thinking behind some of the reasons. Well, not really for .asia, because I think all of us already know the reasons why .asia was applied for, but I'll talk a little bit about .kids. I think it was really, at the time, a response to the children's rights and children's welfare community concerns over the over-commercialization of .kids and wanting this namespace to become exemplary, GTLD with children's rights and interests at heart. So something central to the .kids namespace is that there was a best practices and guiding principles that were actually crafted and created by child-led organizations, children's rights and welfare organizations, to make sure that this is something that they can definitely back behind. They actually form part of the advisory committee that we all often consult with when we come across interesting cases of possible abuse. There's a very, very strong strict policies on many of the categories that go above and beyond many of the different registry operator policies right now. So happy to talk about that. And another important thing I wanted to bring up is there's always this notion when you start applying for a new GTLD, you think that it will be used for something. You envision different uses for it. But when we actually look at the real use cases, we've always been surprised because we were like, oh, okay, it's been used for not only educators and children who actually want to express themselves online as well. We also saw some interesting clothing brands that use interesting .kids names, such as Copycat.kids businesses to launch their products, to look at their markets. We looked at futureleaders.kids as well, and they actually provide high quality educational materials for children to look at, like tutorial modules as well. And also artclubs.asia is an interesting example that actually spans both, I guess, the child community or youth or child community, and also the use of Asia as, I guess, the name and the identity that they have online. One thing also that I've looked at when we were going through this whole idea of, how can we foster innovation? How can we use this opportunity, having a GTLD, having a new GTLD, how can we use this to further innovation, both in terms of our business models, because there's a lot of different use cases, as well as pushing forward the innovation in policy making. And I think three of the things I want to highlight is having and active suspension quite early on in the domain name lifecycle to send the signal to market, to kind of serve as a warning for people who might look at registration for nefarious purposes, to kind of back off and understand that this namespace is being organized, being governed by policies that are quite open for innovation, but definitely guarding against abuse. Having stable pricing policies is always a very good use case for innovation, because a lot of small and medium businesses, a lot of individual entrepreneurs really want to know that they're able to use this namespace to grow their business, which they might be starting startups or something like that, to be able to fit that into a startup budget. And then finally, I guess this is back to this ICANN world as well, to foster innovation and inclusion, to, I think it's happening now as well, to stop kind of over requiring RSPs or registry service evaluation process for every single thing. I think for a lot of registry operators, when we're looking at our business model, looking at business use cases, we really want to have predictability, to be able to look at how we can grow innovation, how we can introduce this to new markets, how we can have new markets interested to apply for this upcoming new round as well. So hopefully that gives us a little bit more introduction of what we're thinking. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jen. That was brilliant. And I'm going to try Lucky again. How are you doing? Lucky, I'm hoping your microphone is unmuted, and please see if you're able to speak to us. Yes. I don't hear you, but I see your microphone seems to be working there. Christy, I see you were trying to say something and we can't hear you either. Right. It seems the audio Zoom isn't coming into the room. Sajid, I wonder if I could put you on the spot and jump around and give us an introduction, some comments on what you heard from Jen in particular, but also your thoughts on the program, particularly notions around innovation and inclusion. That would be great, and apologies for the
Thanks,
jump.
Adam. When Adam mentioned to me a few hours back that I need to talk about domain names and inclusion and innovation, I was really scratching my head how to connect domain name with innovation. I can understand the inclusion bit of it. So, if you look at the whole digital divide, inclusion aspects of it, there are three fault lines that we can think of, right? So the first fault line is along the line of access to internet. How we can ensure that the people across the world, irrespective of where they are based, can access internet uninterruptedly. So that's the first fault line that needs to be addressed. The second fault line is the fault line of bias. So just to give you an idea, on the first fault line, there are, even today, in 2024, around 2 billion people don't have access to internet. Between North and South, in North, 93% of the people have access to internet. In South, it may go up to 42%. Between capital city, between urban city and a rural city, the percentage varies from 92% in urban to anywhere between 20 to 30%, in poor, some cases even more. So the percentages varies a lot based on where you are set up. So access to internet is the first fault line that we need to address if we want to improve digital inclusion. The second fault line is around biases. As much as we believe that internet is, in a way, is a result of human biases that we live in. So if you look at it, there was a data that the facial recognition that is used in case of dark-skinned color women, 44% of cases, the facial recognition may be faulty compared to 1% into a white male. So it sort of reflects the people who are developing the internet and working behind it. So the second fault line is the line around biases. The third fault line, I think, is a fault line of innovation. As we go around the world, there is a challenge of innovation and access to innovation, whether it is an innovation around Web3 infrastructure, whether it's an innovation around artificial intelligence, whether it's an innovation on the latest that is coming out with quantum computing and everything, right? So the third fault line, which is a fault line of innovation, that impacts how people are included in the internet of today and will be included in the internet of tomorrow. So if we look at all these three fault lines, where ICANN really comes handy is the first fault line to address, which is access to internet. Now, if you look at the new GTLD programs that we are working on, right? So the new GTLD programs is an issue of digital identity. We believe that as more and more domain names are allowed to exist, like .asia or .africa or all the other domain names, there will be more people who will create better identity on the internet. And that will obviously improve the digital inclusion or access to internet for a wider group of people who are entrepreneurs, who are individuals, who wants to create an identity on the internet. So new GTLD really helps in that way. Then there's this question of internationalized domain names, right? So non-Latin scripts. So as we improve the international domain names, then we'll have people who are of different languages and others. They will at least have an identity, which is a non-Latin script, but an identity they can relate with. So that is an important part of this whole ICANN initiative. The third one is, of course, universal acceptance. And we can talk about it a lot in different, I was told by Adam not to touch upon that in details, because we apparently have another program to do that. But the point is that that is also a critical part of how ICANN helps into the new GTLD programs. The second thing is, of course, the whole grant, which Martin is here, who has been leading it for a while from the ICANN side. So the grant program is essentially designed for people on the under-resourced areas to help them get into internet, the people who are working on the different parts of the world, ensuring that they have more people in terms of infrastructure, in terms of innovations. The people who are not represented well are somehow financially supported so that they can access the grant program and can get into the internet. So that's another critical part of it that works out. Do you want me to continue? We have time? Okay. So
Thank you very much. I like the I like the three fault lines idea. So thank you. Let's just see, Christy, would you like to have another go and see if you're if we can hear you in the room? We could see that the microphone was working, and perhaps now the captioning will show that you're also coming through. So over to you, Christy, please.
Thanks, Adam. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Hooray. Okay. It's great when technology works. So greetings, everyone, and thanks very much, Adam. I wanted to just say hello from Vancouver, Canada, where it's 4 in the morning here, so apologies if I'm not entirely awake yet. But it's wonderful to see everyone online and also in the room. Thanks for joining this session today. I wanted to share a few observations about digital inclusivity and the domain name system, and also highlight how ICANN's applicant support program is intended to foster broader and more diverse participation in technical internet infrastructure. As some of my colleagues have highlighted, we're already seeing exciting examples of innovation and global participation in GTLDs, or generic top-level domains. And we hope that the next round of GTLDs will open even more doors for both. From the lens of digital inclusion, one thing that I've observed is that concepts and definitions and methodologies for assessing digital inclusion do not typically include any mention of technical internet infrastructure like GTLDs, nor the need for universal acceptance of GTLDs with different languages or scripts. And we have another session related to this tomorrow. And so while definitions of digital inclusion vary, the focus generally falls on access, connectivity, skills, and participation. However, when infrastructure is discussed, it usually refers to internet connectivity, devices, or online services. The underlying technical infrastructure of the domain name system and who has the ability to participate in or shape that infrastructure often gets overlooked when talking about digital inclusion. And as I think about this, it actually reminds me of some of the previous work that I did in a previous life in global food systems. So we know that everyone needs to eat food, but when we look at a plate of food, we rarely think about the complex network of local and global systems that brought those ingredients, those foods together on the plate. And the same holds true for the internet. Millions of people use it every day, and yet very few people think about the infrastructure underlying it, the policies governing it, and who has opportunities to participate in managing that infrastructure or in shaping those policies. I know that many in the internet community are eager to see greater participation and accessibility and inclusion in managing internet infrastructure. And one key opportunity that I see to advance this is ICANN's applicant support program, which Jennifer had spoke about earlier. It's often described as a sort of scholarship for GTLD applicants, and it aims to make the process more accessible globally. It offers fee reductions and capacity development and access to professional volunteer resources. And in doing so, the program fosters, the intent is to foster more innovation and ensure diverse participation in that technical infrastructure of the internet, which is, again, a critical but often overlooked aspect of digital inclusion. I'll speak a bit more in detail about the applicant support program, but for now, I just wanted to emphasize that it's a sort of tangible way to help foster that the future of the internet is inclusive and innovative and globally representative of the next billion users. Thanks.
And thank you that we finally got to hear you as well as see you. Thank you. Lucky, perhaps I think it's time to try you again, and we're having some success getting people online and speaking. So again, if we can come back to that original question that Jen started to cover, when you applied for .Africa and also the city names we mentioned, Joburg and Durban, etc., what was the motivation and what was your sort of inspiration and hope for those TLDs? Hope in how that they would be used, and have those hopes been met? And a little bit of also for you, what's next? So hoping that the audio works. Over to you, Lucky, and thank you.
Hi, hope you can hear me now. Am I audible?
We can. Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, look, thanks, Adam. I think one can answer the question in multiple facets, following the topic around digital inclusion and some of the inhibitors. So we broke ranks in 2012 and we applied for .Africa, .Cape Town, .Durban, and .Cape Town, those 4 names. And ideally, we were looking to bring the continent of Africa into the mainstream. We had to make sure that Africa is also participating in this digital world, in the digital space. More than anything else, we had this dream that the African community felt that they had missed out in the previous round, and they wanted to have this domain name .Africa being utilized not only as a digital identity, but as an instrument that would be used to unite the continent as an instrument that will be used to express the cultural interest, the cultural diversity of the continent. And that is what was underlying some of the important pointers towards the application. And then for us, it was also one of those great honors by the African community to support us and also identify us to be the ones who are leading this campaign of applying for the domain name. And now I'm referring to .Africa when I say the domain name, and also to be the administrators of the name. And we had also to do the marketing for us. Really, it gave us a lot of comfort and confidence that was bestowed on us by the continent. Now, the interesting thing was we're talking about this inclusiveness where we succeeded. We must also try and look where we failed, because it is where we failed where we need to be focusing at to understand how we go further. In that last round of domain names or GTLDs, there were at least 1,900 names. And there were 13 names that were applied for from Africa, the entire continent of 1.3 plus probably 1.4 billion people. Only 13 names were applied for. And of all the 13 names, only 5 are still active. And I'm referring to .Africa, .Cape Town, .Durban, .Joburg, and .MTN. Now, the dream of inclusiveness begins to falter immediately, the fault lines, because here are 13 names that do not see the end of day. And now we are looking at the next round. The first round on its own had its own challenges. Challenge of pricing, 185,000 per name, per domain name. And it is also restricting. When you think about it on the continent, how do we begin to get the continent of Africa to be included in this space? Now we look at only 13 names, and most of those 13 names, if not all of those 13 names, the applicants of those names were all in the Southern Hemisphere or in Southern Africa. And up until today, those names are still administered by entities that would be based in Southern Africa for the rest of the world, for the rest of the continent. So for us, this is a litmus test of the success of using inclusiveness, digital inclusiveness, by looking at where have we succeeded and where have we failed as a continent, or as an ecosystem in the DNS space. Are the domain names beginning to achieve on what is required or what is expected from us? When we look at the GTLD names and look at how they have performed in the last 10 years, we can still see that, in particular, the geographics have not been able to have some stellar performance that is outstanding. .Africa on its own today is ranked 4th in the geographic names with 51,000 names. And this is nowhere next to what would be ideal for a continental name. I mean, we should be looking at being closer to .Asia as an example, who are the leaders in the pack, but all other names are becoming difficult to achieve. We can only look at the CCTLD and say our second level domains, our co.za, org, web, and net, are the stellar performers. And you compare the same number in South Africa across the continent, you realize that, again, the biggest challenge when we talk of inclusiveness is that a continent of 1.4 billion people has only shy of 3.5 million registrations. Now, 3.5 million registrations in this continent, it's very small. It just shows on the degree or the percentage of penetration or the usage. And we need to find out where are these bottlenecks, where Are we losing the plot? Why is it that we are not participating? One of the things is free names, possibly people not being literate or being a commercially viable space, or other things that we still must find. I think the DNS market, the Africa DNS market study, must still find out why we are not growing. But one of the things that I was thinking about earlier on today was if we continue having free names, they are not going to be a solution for the continent. If you think of the Gmail as an example, it is offered for free and it has really put a damper on all the other CCTLDs. And it also puts a damper onto any other GTLD that would enter the market. And we need to have a conversation around to what extent will the Gmail continue being provided, especially on the continent, because it is a weed amongst the critical CCTLDs in the continent. Now, another thing, once we move away from that, it's managing. Who manages those country CCTLDs? We still have CCTLDs that are administered outside the continent. Now, that on its own, it limits on this inclusiveness that we want to achieve, that we want to talk to. Now, it also makes it difficult for our own software developers to participate and build and develop their own solutions. Now, this immediately takes me to the next round. Just looking at the next round, if the previous round in 2014 gave the results that we have, the numbers that I presented, and the demise of 13 to 5 names, what will the next round bring for Africa as a whole? It seems like we are heading for another similar failure for the continent, but the rest of the world might be fine. If today it is projected that a domain name will be 285,000 per name and discounted at 85%, and you think of the economies on the continent, what is important? Is it a domain name or bread on the table, or taking your kids to school? The priorities shift and such that there is not going to be a single entity or company that will want to pay, whether it is 35,000 US dollars or 285. I do not see that happening. And the next round means it will still be excluding a lot of players from the continent. There is a round that has just begun of your registry service providers. It equally, the evaluation process or the mechanism for that requires exorbitant amounts of money to the region of 90,000 US dollars to be evaluated to be a service provider. That immediately marginalizes all the service providers on the continent. You will find that the service providers that will be participating in the next round are going to be from the Northern Hemisphere. We will have nothing coming from the Southern Hemisphere or the third world countries. And that also further stamps this approval on exclusivity. And I can go on and talk about solutions. How do we think we should do this? Not necessarily providing the names or this process for free for the continent, but creating enabling mechanisms. And we are discussing in this direction. And I hope, as we look at the challenges and the beauty whilst we're celebrating Africa, but I thought, let me bring another dimension on some of the challenges that I think need to be addressed as we discuss the digital inclusion. I will take a break and come back to deal with other issues there. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Lucky. And the solutions part, perhaps, Jen, you can also start thinking of ideas from what Lucky's been presenting to us here about what are the solutions. And I will mention that, you're quite right about the challenges, Lucky, with the notion of 1.4 billion people and only 5 billion, million names registered. We have looked at that. We've done, ICANN and the community has looked at DNS studies, marketplace studies for Africa, and have tried to respond to that with different ways to encourage. And of course, there's the Coalition for Digital Africa, bringing together not just ICANN, but the the country code top-level domain community from Africa, and also yourself and other operators, the Smart Africa groups and others who are working more directly in the development processes. And perhaps some of the ICANN board members who are in the room might want to comment at some point on some of the work we're doing there. But Christy, I wonder if we can come back to you and ask you if you could say a few words, what we're doing in engagement activities for the next round, and also how the applicant support program is going to address some of the issues that Lucky referenced there, if that's all right. Thank you. Over to you, Christy.
Sure. Thanks so much, Adam. And Lucky, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and observations from the last round. And I think my understanding in working very closely with the ICANN community on developing the next round, and in particular the applicant support program, is that there's a lot of emphasis and attention and desire to make sure that the next round has global diverse participation. And one of the opportunities for helping to support that is the applicant support program. In fact, the community provided guidance recommendations on outreach and communications for the applicant support program, which asked ICANN to emphasize underserved communities, nonprofits, social enterprises, and community groups. And so far on the applicant support program, which just opened to receive applications last month, outreach and communications for that has really only targeted underserved regions so far, and not at all in more developed economies just yet. The applicant support program is open for 12 months, and the idea behind that is to give applicants a really long runway to learn about the program, to build their understanding about it, and hopefully to apply. And when they do apply, get access to all of the supports available, which includes not just the fee reductions in the GTLD evaluation fee, but also access to volunteer professional service providers, as well as a capacity development program that ICANN is constructing right now. And so what's interesting, just in the first months, and I can't provide detailed numbers just yet because I don't want to take the wind out of our sails on Wednesday when we announce the numbers, but just in the first month, we are already seeing interest in the applicant support program from all corners of the world and all regions, including Africa, which is really fantastic because it's only been open for just a few weeks. But we're also under sort of no illusion that ICANN and the ICANN community can do this alone, right? So while we're putting a lot of resources and effort into spreading awareness and understanding about the next round and the opportunities therein, especially to advance digital inclusion, we're also relying on the ICANN community and the broader internet governance community to spread the word, to raise awareness, to help people understand the relevance of the domain name system and GTLDs to the work that they're already doing. And that's where this broader community, including the IGF, comes in. I will note that similar to the 2012 round, but again, only .kids was able to take advantage of it, the fee reduction provided to supported GTLD applicants is really intended to be meaningful and significant. And so this will be a 75 to 85% discount on the GTLD evaluation fee. That's sort of the base fee of evaluating the application, but also on some conditional evaluations. So for example, if you are a supported applicant that applies for a geographic name, that's a conditional evaluation that would also be receiving the same discount of 75 to 85%. If you're a community priority evaluation applicant, you're applying for a top-level domain that represents a community, that's another evaluation fee that again would be receiving that 75 to 85% discount. So the idea is to provide financial support, not just in a sort of one-time, discount, but also to think about the whole life cycle and journey of the applicant, and how do we support and sustain more diverse entrants into this space over that course of that life cycle. And so ICANN did research to understand, what other sort of similar programs like the applicant support program tend to provide. And it's usually this beyond the sort of one-time upfront investment, you're providing that long-term capacity development, training, and support. For supported applicants that become registry operators, like DocKids, there would also be a discount in the annual base registry agreement fees. And so that's something that we're, again, trying to help the first few years of a supported applicant becoming that registry operator, to kind of help them get up to speed in the market and run their business. We're providing that discount in the longer term for the first 3 years post-operation. I know that there's been some discussion about the fee for the registry service providers, and I've heard some folks in the community talk about the fact that that was not considered in terms of like, how do we provide support for registry service providers. So it just wasn't a policy recommendation, but it's something that has gained a lot of interest and discussion since the registry service provider program has launched. And I think it's interesting to consider that in terms of the future continuous improvement of future next rounds. How can we further improve the opportunities for diverse participation in all aspects of the next round, not just in the GTLD side, but also the RSP side. Adam, did I address your question? Is there anything else you wanted me to speak to?
I think that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Christy. And I just wanted to say, I think what's clear from this is that there's many thousands of hours of work have gone into looking at reviewing the 2012 process and making improvements for this latest round. And while it sounds, when we say the word ICANN has done, it's important to remember that this is a community of volunteers. The staff guide the process, but these ideas and these improvements, these mechanisms come from our multi-stakeholder community, of course. I was wondering, I mentioned perhaps board member might want to respond on an ASP-related issue, or one of the comments from Lucky. But really, Sajid, if that's something you want to pick up on, or if it's we'd like to continue on to Jen and the opportunities and challenges. But you could
sure.
go on.
I mean, I was previously talking about the 3 fault lines, right? So the fault lines that is essentially causing digital divide. And if you look at the first fault line that I talked about, which is how to make people access to internet, I think it's very important to create the ability for different people to participate in the system. At the end of the day, if we believe in the hypothesis that competition creates innovation, then the more open we make it for people to join through different support programs, the better competition we'll have, the better innovation we'll have, and the whole ecosystem will flourish, right? So on the application support program, we have done a lot of work. Martin, I know you wanted to say something, or Becky. Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Christy's talked a lot about the applicant support program, but it is based on longstanding policy and policy that the community implemented to support diversity and inclusiveness on the internet. And the support, as Christy noted, will be meaningful in terms of both the application fee reduction, also enabling supported applicants to participate in auctions in a meaningful way. And unlike the 2012 round, this year in this round, we will be contemplating ongoing support to enable the domain to get up and running. So deferred, discounted ICANN fees and the like, all are things that are going to be very important. Ultimately, there needs to be a market that supports a domain, so it's not intended to be forever, but the goal would be to provide enough support to ensure that the domain is able to operate and able to educate people about its existence and create a market and create interest in it. So it's a very important aspect of increasing access to the internet locally across the world.
Thank you, Becky.
Hi.
Thanks, Sajid. Not sure.
Adam,
Yes,
if I may come in,
please, Lucky.
and thanks for those comments that have been made, regarding the solutions and how this applicant support program is being implemented and rolled out to include people from the underdeveloped world or countries. But one of the things that I want us to think of and consider, think of it very strongly, whilst we're talking of bringing in other mechanisms, training and other support mechanisms, what if we make this leap of faith and say, based on the evidence that we have, there is empirical evidence that currently the 4 GTLDs in Africa, Africa, Cape Town, Durban, and Joburg, have not been very successful, but they've been successful in the sense that they are still active 10 years later, and they are growing very slowly. Africa has just made the turn, the corner. There is growth. What if we use that very lessons that we have in our hands that we have seen and allow those very entities to be the ones working with the local communities to give training to the local communities, those potential applicants on the continent, to be trained or given support by the guys who are on the ground, the guys that have seen it, the guys that have walked the journey. And I'm referring here to Registry Africa. Registry Africa has been very active in growing these domain names, these geographics, and I believe we've been successful. I believe that the model, there is a business model that we have shared at the last Africa Strategy session in Istanbul, where we believe that if we were to create a model whereby there's a sponsor or an applicant, and that applicant would be a city or a municipality, a county, or even a community. And these will be the entities that apply for a domain name. And that domain name, they will then appoint an operator consisting of a registry and a registry backend provider. And this could be a local provider. And this could be done as a build, operate, and transfer basis. And they would be building this on behalf of this city or municipality. The interest for the city and the municipality is to provide service to its residents and derive revenue from the utilities or the services that they are providing to their citizens. And out of that, they grant each citizen, each utility holder, a domain name, an email address. And that email address would enhance the delivery of bills and the settlement of bills based on what would be utilized. We believe such a model, when applied or implemented on the continent and underserved or underdeveloped countries, it would attract more players, more participants. And this needs some kind of understanding that we have seen it, we have walked this ground, we think we understand what is the best mechanism of bringing about inclusion. And this is my submission to this audience, that consider this business model of an applicant being a city municipality, gaining or getting access to that discount, appointing a registry operator and a back-end provider to be the ones who are doing the work, and building websites around alongside that, providing, and we are looking now at where is the next wave of a domain name. For us, the next wave for domain names, when we talk of inclusivity and innovation, is getting more of our own participating in e-commerce. E-commerce is the next great space for domain names. If we can participate extensively, solid in that space, would have been able to achieve a lot in this space. Thanks, Adam. There.
So I just want to say to something that Lucky mentioned that's very important. Part of the program for applicant support will be sort of pro bono assistance in terms of we're looking for people to help applicants with writing applications, understanding the legal issues, but also the business models. And so what Lucky was saying about learning the lessons from what Africa, Cape Town have done and how they've grown, and the insights that you're providing, Lucky, are critically important. And I hope we will have a lot of people who will volunteer to be part of the applicant support to get that kind of hands-on, on the ground experience with it. But I know that's something that the applicant support program is putting together as the outreach for the pro bono, for the sort of non-monetary but very critical support in terms of business models and dealing with the paperwork and the like. And then you want to... Okay, so there's also a question from Neil in the chat about the prospect of an applicant for the registry service provider pre-evaluation form. The cost for the evaluation of back-end service providers is like the cost of the GTLD program in general, cost recovery. So there is a $92,000 projection, but that is based on a certain number of applicants, and the fee itself will go down if we get more applicants for that. The other thing that's really important to keep in mind is in the last round, every evaluation, every application included an evaluation of the back-end service provider. And so there was a cost to the applicant in the form of that evaluation. That won't be here this time because the registry service providers are being evaluated on a sort of once and done process. So there are savings that will, and benefits that will accrue to supported applicants and applicants in underserved regions from the program itself. And then finally, the question of sort of whether there should be applicant support for back-end registries raises really important stability and security issues. Back-end service providers are businesses that are going to be, operating multiple top-level domains all around the world, and the very last thing that we should allow to happen is to not thoroughly evaluate the ability of that service provider to provide high quality service. And that costs money, that evaluation costs money. So although I think we understand and agree with the desire to have globally located back-end service providers, we have to balance that with the absolutely critical stability and security requirements, and take into account the fact that this once and done evaluation process will benefit applicants globally who will not have to bear the costs of those as part of the evaluation process.
Thanks, Becky, and thanks for the... Oh, go ahead, Martin, please.
Hi, this is Maarten Botteman. Sorry just to add to what Becky said, another big difference between the first round was that there were just a handful backend providers. Actually, there's now a market with choice, including non-profit organizations and CCs. So you have much more offer and much more reasonable pricing as well. Just wanted to add that part.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Becky, for your comments. It's very helpful, very kind of you. Just wanted to welcome Ram Mohan to the room. I know you've been in much demand in other sessions. So Ram, as I mentioned, is the Chief Strategy Officer for Identity Digital and one of the largest operators of the new TLD batch from 2012. And wanted to say we've been talking about, Lucky and Jen have been talking about their experience from 2012 and Jen from before with .asia and how that's worked, and Lucky's made some very important points about inclusion and how we can get people applying from the African content, etc. But please make an introduction and give us some ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you so much. And my apologies for joining this session late. I was speaking at another one. So I want to focus my comments on in two areas. One is that we look at innovation with a lowercase I rather than innovation with an uppercase I. Let me explain what that means. Often the success of programs is only seen years out. And in the meanwhile, you have many prognosticators who pre-decide and who say that a program has failed or has succeeded based on conventional metrics. Metrics, for example, in the domain name industry, such as how many domains have been registered. And you find especially a prevalent logic inside of the domain name industry that focuses on success almost directly correlated to the number of domains that people have registered. But I'd like to say that that is actually a myth. If you look at my own company and the 300 plus domain names that we have, I can tell you that we have success in all of them, not in the way of looking at it purely from a commercial, is it a profit-making enterprise, one TLD at a time? So one way of looking at innovation is, for us, has been in the existing domain name space prior to the various rounds that ICANN has introduced, as the gold standard has been .com and in the GTLD space, and businesses, organizations applying for a .com, getting a .com domain name. We are now in a situation where it's somewhere in the order of 17 or 18 characters that you have to string together to get an open name that is just easily available in .com, without paying any kind of a premium, right? So if, just to give you an example, if I say I want to get, Ram's Studio, if I type in ramstudio.com, it's hard to get. It's probably gone. Even if I type in Ram's-Studio, even that is hard to get. And what you'll find is engines that come back and say, how about ramstudioonline.com? How about ramsdigitalstudio.com, etc., right? The lowercase I innovation that has happened is with the advent of new TLDs and the availability of them, is that I can go and get ram.studio, or I can get ram.photography, or whatever it is, right? And there is innovation that has come about just by that, because you're bringing communities that were otherwise forced to get very long strings that are often not easy to remember, often not easy to relay. Those strings are now no longer as important because you can get memorable, descriptive strings available directly in the domain space. And I think that is true innovation that is being fostered. So that's the one thing that I'd like to make a point on. The second is on, we've talked here about diversity and inclusion. The thing here is that if you do not get to linguistic diversity combined with the other kinds of diversity that ICANN is looking for, you're going to fail. There has to be linguistic diversity as a core outreach goal, as a core model for a definition of success. It's not the only determinant of success, but it ought to be a significant factor and a significant metric that you measure, because the world that we know is not a world of English and Spanish and Chinese and Arabic, right? The world that we know is far more multilingual, but we do not have systems at the domain name space, at the domain name level, that can reflect the actual reality of the people of the world. And for that, we need to really have a focus on linguistic diversity. So I'm pleased that there is a session tomorrow on universal acceptance and internationalized domain names. It's not enough to just say, let us get names in your language, let us get names accessible online. We have to also look at are the various languages and the communities that have those languages, do they have the knowledge, understanding, awareness to be able to participate in what you're bringing forward? Because when they do that, you will find lowercase innovation coming through.
Nice new way to look at this. And Jen, .Asia and language and the issues around that. How do you respond to this idea of lowercase innovation based on language and inclusion? Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. I thought we weren't supposed to talk about it, but I'm happy as ever to be able to say more. I think especially coming from Asia Pacific, language is ultimately so important. Almost none of us in Asia Pacific has English as our first language. It's some of us, it's our second language, third language, or even fourth language. It's really important for the community that we're trying to serve, to actually serve their needs, for them to be able to not only know they can navigate the internet in their own language, that they have the know-how to do so. And I'm really happy to hear both from Becky and also Christy at the improvements that have been made towards the applicant support program, because obviously .kids was the beneficiary, the single beneficiary of the 2012 round applicant support program. But I mean, we're happy in that way. But looking at it overall, that is a sign that there's a lot more things that need to be improved coming to the new round. Where can we really target and provide this benefit? International domain names is one of the priorities that ICANN has said time and time again that they are looking for the new round. Even this morning, we heard from Curtis that, this is what ICANN really wants to happen, to be able to serve the underserved or underrepresented regions, to be able to get these people online, being able to use these new domain names in a way not only to benefit the community, but in a way that allows for innovation, allows for market-driven innovation and entrepreneurship. The lowercase a that, not a, lowercase I, see, English is not my first language either, that Ram was saying is so critical. It's so critical. And I think especially for Asia Pacific, because linguistic diversity is so broad, it is more than just that. We're talking now about digital inclusion and language justice. And I think that's something that Ram touched on is really near and dear to .Asia's heart, of course, .kids as well. What we're trying to look, our wishes, if we had, 3 wishes for what .Asia wants to see for the next round is, of course, more applicants coming in from Asia Pacific region. We are a huge region with most of the world population and growing. And more from community applicants, because, I heard both from Becky and Christy that the improvements done for these different evaluation processes, including fee reductions. That is very important. But in addition to that, to provide the knowledge and the upskilling that allows them to succeed and sustain their business. That's the most important part. So more from community, that the community priority evaluation should lean towards supporting those who want to be community and not just kind of looking at it from the lens of, oh, we must weed out these people or these organizations that are trying to game the system. Of course, every single system will have people who are looking to look for the loopholes, but the outset of how we're trying to organize and design these programs really should be for people who want to use this for the benefit of that community. So hopefully that answers a little bit more. And the final little bit on internationalized domain names, my last wish, perhaps, that it's now on the equal footing to all the different ASCII domain names, the English language domain names that you see. So that could be not something that's weird or new, but that becomes something that's really common and nobody blinks an eye at it.
We switched it off. I put a link into the chat about the workshop tomorrow, and and the words beginning for that session are that the internet must be multilingual and inclusive is the first sentence of the description there. So we have about 24 minutes left, 20 minutes left, something like that, 20 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience? You're here, been very attentive and patient at the beginning. So would anybody like to raise a hand and we'll pass a mic around, or the same for any question online? If not, I would like to go back to, could you pass the microphone backwards, please? Would like to go back to Lucky and his comment about solutions. I don't think we should miss that. Sir.
Thank you very much, Paulos Nyirenda from Malawi. I just wanted maybe to raise the issue, one of the issues that lacked, which is success of the new GTLDs that were put up in the last round, especially those from Africa, Johannesburg, Cape Town. They haven't been as successful as expected, and I think that this applies to quite a few other new GTLDs. I don't know if in the next round there is an evaluation on this and how ICANN wants to move forward with the success of new GTLDs.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. So I want to say we should expect not all GTLDs will succeed. We should walk away from this idea that just because ICANN introduces a new GTLD program and you have hundreds, if not thousands, of new GTLDs that come through, that they all must be successful. I think at least from ICANN's point of view, the goal has to be to create a level playing field and to make sure that the ingredients for success are present and accessible to all. Those ingredients include the applicant support, they include the technical knowledge, they include linguistic ability, they include universal acceptance, things like that. The rest of it, where there are market forces that come to bear, I really think we should allow economics and market forces to do what they do well, rather than try to engineer some kind of social experiment to arrive at some definition of success.
If I can add a few points, the whole multi-stakeholderism that ICANN is very proud of is essentially means that all the different voices gets heard and gets built into the different activities and policies that we form. So as a result of that, this multilingualism, which is an issue, and that's what you see different activities like UA days and international domain names and many initiatives, including application support program that has been taken. But I completely agree with Ram that at the end of the day, it needs to make sense for someone to continue a domain name indefinitely. I mean, application support program can only continue up to a certain extent. It cannot be infinite.
Yeah, if I may come in, I, I think I'm quite excited by Ram's approach to complex issues. He explains them with lower and upper cases, and of course it makes sense the more he puts context into that. And starting with the second point where he talks to diversity and inclusion, and in particular the linguistic diversity. For us, one of the things that we picked up in early days is that this is very critical, the issue of linguistic diversity. And this was supported by the fact that there is less than 15% of African content, I'm talking our history books, our music, etc., that is available on internet. And it makes it difficult for the African child to go into internet and find sufficient information of themselves, something that had been created and generated by themselves across the multiple languages on the continent. And that, again, for us becomes an inhibitor to this digital inclusion. And we need to start bridging that gap to this digital inclusion by ensuring that more African languages are translated into, or more internet content is translated into African languages so that this can be accessible to the larger community. And with that, we will see more people participating, and we'll see more appreciation for what we are discussing today, the DNS, the domain name, and the inclusiveness. And then those lower cases and innovation, it is well and good, again, you know, there are certain things that are price sensitive. Whilst we say the success of a domain name is not the number of names that you would have sold, it proves slightly different, you know, when you don't have the numbers to begin to innovate around. We have been able to innovate as an entity around names like your co.za. We've been able to build other solutions because we have scale. We don't need to reach the scale that would be taking away from our creativeness, or what you would call the uppercase innovation. It tells us that numbers do matter, especially for certain markets. You need to be price sensitive on the African continent. You cannot charge any fee that is very far from the market conditions. That will make it even more difficult for people to participate. So we need to be grappling. For us, we're grappling with all those things. How sensitive can we be to the pricing? Make sure that it's correct. And once the numbers are there and the scale is there, then we begin to bring in innovation. We bring more solutions into this thing so that this domain name is not just what it is, blank and boring, but we put color, we put flair into these things. This reminds me of a different solution that was innovated on the continent. I don't know, most of you might not or could have heard of it. Banks, for a very long time, have been excluding a lot of the citizens across the continent. And one mobile operator realized that we have a lot of people who are not banked, and we can use our platform, our mobile platform, to make sure that people have access to cash, access to money, or they can use this tool, this mobile phone, to make payments and transact, buy tomatoes, pay for the piki or that taxi in town. And that brought in M-Pesa. And that was the innovation when people felt marginalized by banking systems, that they couldn't qualify, they couldn't fulfill some of these KYCs. And then another instrument was developed which was more accommodating. And I'm seeing that for us, again, if we want to have this inclusiveness properly addressed, we have to think with an uppercase innovation and come up with solutions that are going to bring more participants in the third world or those underdeveloped or underserved markets. We have to think outside what we are starting. We are on the right track, but let's think again, if is this all that we can do? Is this sufficient? Does this provide a foolproof solution for what we want to achieve, inclusiveness? History will judge us that we have not done enough. We have failed to think far and fast to ensure that we include those that are marginalized. Thank you.
We have over to Jen again, and then I have Nick Wedman Smith behind me asking questions. Oh, go to Nick, please.
Oh, thank you, Adam. I think that works, I hope. Very strange with headphones, not headphones. So my name's Nick Wenban Smith. I'm employed by a company called Nominat. And from our perspective, from the last round of the new GTLDs, I wanted to just share a little bit of a story because although the United Kingdom is, one of the G7 wealthy nations, we have areas of significant deprivation and social challenges, and I think that's the case in even in the very wealthiest of countries. So we were very interested to get better digital presence for the Welsh community, which is a population of about 5 million and includes some of the very poorest parts of the United Kingdom. And I have to tell you that when we approached the Welsh elected officials in terms of the cost of the new GTLD applications, plus, of course, the technical time and infrastructure and expertise required, and to make it twice as bad, they wanted two, because they wanted the one in the Welsh version, because part of this is about linguistic diversity, so they needed to have two application fees, plus two letters of credit for the continuing obligations thing, which is also extremely expensive. Now, I want to be positive to say that actually it's been a very good initiative, and over the course of time, they've now got a lot of very high profile registrations. For example, the national sport is rugby, and so they use a .wales and a .cymru domain names for their national sport, for the local government, for the musical and cultural things are all very well represented online. And they have now, I think, between the two, 20,000 domains under registration, which is sustainable. But I wanted to say that it has been, first of all, it required an investor which was prepared to take a lot of risk and over the long time, and that investor was Nominat, in fact. So we paid the application fees and we did all of the things that they needed to do. And then it has taken the order of 12 years of continuous investment and over a long, long period of time before you see any sort of return. So I suppose what I'm just saying, while the applicant support program is being still refined within ICANN, you just need to understand that even for sophisticated applicants with relatively deep pockets, it was quite a hard piece of work and it required a lot longer. Certainly the business models that we put together, which our finance team signed off on when we paid for the applications, were well far off the mark, is what I would say. And I think just urge everybody to sort of try to whatever you can do to help people with the applications. It'll need 10 times that what you're currently, in order to get these things off the ground, because it's a hugely complex process and a hugely expensive and technically time-consuming one, even for people who are expert in the area. That's my thoughts on that. I don't know, it's not really a question, I'm just saying you need to do more.
Over to Jen, who's been doing a lot already. Do more, Jen. Thank you.
Where to even begin? Okay. Actually, I was really happy to go after Nick because I was going to bring back the example of .kids, which was the sole recipient of the applicant support program back in 2012. I mean, we didn't launch until about 2 years ago. It's taken a very, very long time. And .Asia is actually the organization behind all of this. We are supposedly on a cost recovery basis, but really we have underwritten everything, the know-how on how to create the registry policies, leveraging on our registry backend providers, of course, to do all of that. And I foresee coming into the new round, I mean, talking again about success, right? Looking at, if we're looking at pure numbers, that's just one measurement of success. I think success means different things to different people. I like how Lucky has mentioned time and time again as well, and it's really important to stress. The African continent really needs to look at this, whether or not this new GTLD program for them coming in the new round, what success will look like for the African region. And I could bring it back to Asia Pacific. What does success might look like for Asia Pacific? Is it more applications with internationalized domain names? Is it more, brands coming in? Is it more SMEs? Is it more innovative, applications? I think the answer is all of the above. And I think right now, as a community as well, we're trying to refine the ways to be able to get to the success. Not only, of course, ICANN, the organization, but ICANN is also a community who's trying to look at lessons learned from the previous round to be able to apply them and create solutions that allow for innovation, but not to the point where this new, as a new applicant, you want to be able to eventually independently run your domain, not always have this, guardrails around, or training wheels, as I like to call them, forever, because that is not really a true sense of success. So being able to give that that boost and that help to the underserved regions, to the markets that really need this but don't know how, I think that is the balance we really have to strike here.
Ram, please.
Briefly, success for ICANN in this next round perhaps should include some estimation of the of TLDs that will not succeed, because that is the market reality. And we really, I think, are doing all of us a disservice by going into this with an idea that 100% success rate or else. And I think that's unrealistic. That's not how the marketplace works. We ought to have a recognition of that. We also ought to recognize that in some cases, the need may be apparent, but the demand may not be evident, right? Just because there is a need for something doesn't mean that the people who profess to have the need will be willing to go and stand up and, open up their wallets and buy that name, right? So I think some level of realism and some level of, projecting and being quite clear that while the new TLD program will and should work on diversity, applicant support, especially linguistic diversity, which is close to my heart as well, while all of those things are there, if you do all of those things, you should still expect some level of failure.
Final comment, and then we'll probably have to wrap up, I think.
Thank you. I mean, wearing my investor hat, we always accept some failures. And I've seen companies launching products which do very well till they start charging for it. So there is always this reality, and there are realities that we need to accept, but we continue to support. I mean, like I said, ICANN listens to the voices. The whole idea of multi-stakeholderism is to listen to voices around and do whatever we can to support.
Very much, everybody, for your time this afternoon. We mentioned there is a workshop tomorrow afternoon around the issues of multilingualism, IDNs, universal acceptance. So please look at the schedule for a workshop number 150. Want to thank particularly online Lucky and Christy. Lucky for the challenges you're facing across the region, and also solutions and issues that are very relevant to the whole of WSIS and not just discussions with an ICANN community, so very relevant. To Jen for just being very kind and helpful throughout and providing a lot of useful information, particularly at the beginning while I was running around there. Thank you. Incredibly kind. And Sajid for, you know, the fault line scenarios and ideas. Ram, I like, you know, lowercase innovation and the importance of language. So I think it's been very helpful, and very grateful to all of you for being here and to our speakers. So thank you. The end. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.